How can one reckless text, sent after midnight and meant for an old flame, unravel everything I thought I could control? What begins as a private joke, a drunken plea for my ex to rescue me from my boring marriage, ends with my husband's icy calm as he delivers official papers to my door. Can I still play the victim when my own words become the proof that destroys my life? The wine made everything seem like a brilliant idea. That's what I told myself as I stared at my phone screen, the cursor blinking in the empty message box like a dare. 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio had turned my frustration with Caleb into liquid courage, and Dom's name in my contacts looked like salvation. "Come on, Tilly," I whispered to myself in our pristine apartment, the silence so thick I could hear the refrigerator humming 2 rooms away. "It's just a text. What's the worst that could happen?" The fight with Caleb had been typical, him buried in spreadsheets, me trying to plan a weekend getaway, and his response being a grunt about budget constraints without even looking up from his laptop. 34 years old, and I felt like I was married to an accountant robot. Which, technically, I was. My fingers moved across the screen before my brain could stop them. "Dom, I know this is crazy, but I can't stop thinking about us. Caleb is so boring and cold. I made a mistake marrying him. I keep thinking about that weekend we spent in the mountains and how alive you made me feel. I know you probably think I'm pathetic, but could we maybe meet up? I think I'm ready to leave him. I miss what we had. I miss you. Send." The message disappeared into the digital void, and immediately my stomach dropped. But the wine was still working its magic, whispering that this was exactly what I needed. Validation, excitement, proof that I was still desirable. I stumbled to bed, leaving Caleb hunched over his computer in the home office. He didn't even notice me brush my teeth or slip under the covers. Typical. The next morning arrived with a hangover and the harsh light of reality. I reached for my phone, hoping the whole thing had been a nightmare. But there it was, my desperate plea to Dom, marked as read at 2:47 a.m. Worse, there was a response. "Tilly, wow, that's a lot. I'm seeing someone now. Maybe you should talk to your husband instead of texting exes at 2 a.m. Take care." My cheeks burned with embarrassment and rage. How dare he make me feel pathetic? I was offering him everything, and he was lecturing me like a child. "Morning," Caleb said from the kitchen, his voice unusually flat. He was already dressed for work, tie perfectly straight, coffee mug in hand. "Morning," I mumbled, wrapping my robe tighter. Something felt off. He wasn't meeting my eyes, and there was a tension in his shoulders that made my skin crawl. "Sleep well?" he asked, and there was something in his tone that made me look up sharply. "Fine. You?" "Interesting night." He took a sip of coffee, studying me over the rim. "My phone died around midnight. Had to use yours to set an alarm. Hope you don't mind." The blood drained from my face. "You used my phone?" "Just for the alarm." His smile was cold and precise. "Interesting reading, though." I opened my mouth to explain, to lie, to do something, but he was already heading for the door. "Have a good day at work, Tilly. We'll talk tonight." The door closed with a quiet click that sounded like a gunshot. I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the neat, sterile perfection that Caleb insisted on, and realized that my brilliant wine-fueled idea had just blown up my entire life. But even as panic clawed at my chest, a part of me was already crafting the story I'd tell. How Caleb was controlling, how he'd violated my privacy, how this was really all his fault for being such a cold, distant husband. After all, if he'd been paying attention to me, I never would have needed to text Dom in the first place. The office felt different the moment I walked in. Maybe it was my paranoia, or maybe it was the way Nate Foster's eyes lit up when he saw me approaching my desk in the HR department of Meridian Financial Services. "Well, well, well," Nate said, rolling his chair closer to my cubicle. "Someone looks like they had an interesting evening." "Just tired," I muttered, powering up my computer and hoping he'd take the hint. "Tired from what?" Late night texting. His grin was predatory. My blood froze. What are you talking about? Oh, come on, Tilly. You left your phone on your desk yesterday when you went to that meeting with Patterson. It kept buzzing with notifications. I may have glanced at the screen. He leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying himself. Dom Harper, right? Isn't that your ex from college? You had no right to. Relax, I didn't read anything. But the preview text was illuminating. He made air quotes. Something about mountains and mistakes. Sounds juicy. I wanted to die. Or kill him. Both seemed like viable options. It's not what you think, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Hey, I'm not judging. Marriage is hard. Sometimes we all need a little excitement. He waggled his eyebrows. Just be careful. You know how fast gossip travels around here. As if summoned by his words, Rafa Alvarez appeared at my cubicle with 2 cups of coffee. Morning, gorgeous, he said, handing me one. You look like you need this. Rafa was the office flirt, harmless, fun, and exactly the kind of attention I craved. At 29, he had that easy confidence that made everyone feel special. Usually, his attention made me feel better about myself. Today, it felt like another complication. Thanks, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. So, Nate said, clearly not ready to drop his new favorite topic, we were just discussing Tilly's late-night communication habits. Nate, I warned. What kind of habits? Rafa asked, settling on the edge of my desk. The kind that involve exes and regret, Nate said with a smirk. Shut up, I snapped, but it was too late. The seed was planted, and I could see the curiosity bloom in Rafa's eyes. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister Lydia. Call me when you get a chance, everything okay? Caleb seemed weird when I ran into him at the coffee shop this morning. My stomach dropped. Caleb never went to that coffee shop. It was on the opposite side of town from his office. What was he doing there? Another buzz. This time it was Janice, Caleb's mother. Oh, Tilly, we need to discuss your recent behavior. It's unacceptable and reflects poorly on our family. Call me immediately. Everything okay? Rafa asked, noticing my expression. Fine, I lied. Just family drama. Isn't it always? He squeezed my shoulder sympathetically. You know, if you ever need to vent over drinks. Maybe, I said, and I meant it. The idea of drowning my problems in wine and Rafa's attention sounded perfect. The rest of the day crawled by. I couldn't concentrate on anything, constantly checking my phone for messages from Caleb or Dom, or anyone who might give me a clue about how bad this was going to get. But Caleb's silence was deafening, and Dom hadn't responded to my follow-up text trying to explain myself. By 5 o'clock, I was desperate for distraction. When Rafa suggested happy hour at Vintage, the wine bar downtown, I practically leaped at the invitation. Let me just text my husband, I said, then paused. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I know you found out I'm texting my ex, but I'm going drinking with my coworker instead of coming home to face the music. Instead, I sent, working late tonight, don't wait up. It wasn't technically a lie. Avoiding your problems was a kind of work. Vintage was crowded and loud, exactly what I needed. Rafa was in full charm mode, telling funny stories about difficult clients and making sure my wine glass never emptied. For a few hours, I could pretend I was single and carefree, that some handsome younger man found me fascinating. You seem tense, Rafa observed during our third round. Husband troubles. Is it that obvious? Only because I'm an expert at reading beautiful women. He grinned. Want to talk about it? The wine made honesty feel safe. He's just cold, distant, like he doesn't even see me anymore. I feel invisible in my own marriage. That's terrible, Rafa said, leaning closer. A woman like you should never feel invisible. Right? I felt validated, understood. I mean, I have needs. Emotional needs. I'm not asking for the moon, just some attention, some passion. Of course you are. You're vibrant and alive. You deserve someone who appreciates that. I pulled out my phone and snapped a selfie of us, Rafa's arm around my shoulders, both of us laughing. Before I could think twice, I posted it to Instagram with the caption, "Finally spending time with someone who knows how to have fun. Living my best life, das schau, no regrets." It felt like rebellion, like reclaiming my power. The Uber ride home was a blur of streetlights and wine-induced confidence. I had my story ready. Caleb was controlling and paranoid. I was just catching up with an old friend, and if he had a problem with that, maybe he should try being a better husband. But when I opened the front door, the apartment was dark. Caleb's car wasn't in the parking space. On the kitchen table, illuminated by the light from the hallway, was a single sheet of paper. My drunk text to Dom, printed out in black and white, with certain phrases highlighted in yellow. "Caleb is so boring and cold. I made a mistake marrying him. I think I'm ready to leave him." At the bottom, in Caleb's precise handwriting, "We'll discuss this when I get back. Don't wait up." I stared at the paper, my wine-soaked confidence evaporating. This wasn't just an argument we could sweep under the rug. This was evidence. This was proof of every terrible thought I'd had about our marriage, presented like an indictment. But as the shock wore off, anger took its place. How dare he go through my phone? How dare he throw my private thoughts in my face like this? I was the victim here, the neglected wife driven to desperation by his emotional unavailability. I crumpled up the paper and threw it in the trash. If Caleb wanted a fight, he'd get one. But I wasn't going down without defending myself. After all, if he'd been a better husband, none of this would have happened. I woke up on the couch with a crick in my neck and the taste of regret in my mouth. Caleb still wasn't home, and his side of the bed looked untouched. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Janice and a string of increasingly angry texts. "Ottilie, your behavior is disgraceful. Answer your phone immediately. I've spoken to Caleb. This ends now." I deleted them all without reading the rest. The last thing I needed was Caleb's mother lecturing me about marriage when her precious son couldn't even be bothered to come home and discuss our problems like adults. A shower and 3 cups of coffee later, I felt almost human again. I had a plan, own the narrative. If people were going to talk, I'd give them something to talk about. I'd show everyone that I was the fun, vibrant one in this marriage, and Caleb was the boring, controlling husband who couldn't handle having an independent wife. I spent an hour getting ready, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, outfit that struck the right balance between professional and alluring. If I was going to be the center of attention, I was going to look the part. The office was buzzing when I arrived. I could feel eyes on me as I walked to my desk, but I held my head high, let them stare, let them wonder. "Morning, sunshine," Nate said with his usual smirk. "Recover from your late night?" "What late night?" I asked innocently. "The one you posted all over social media." He turned his computer screen toward me. My Instagram post from Vintage was displayed, and it already had 43 likes and 12 comments. Most of the comments were supportive, friends from college saying things like, "You look amazing," and "so fun." But there were a few that made my stomach clench. "Isn't she married?" From someone I barely knew. "Where's hubby?" From my cousin in Ohio. "Living your best life without your husband. Interesting." From Amanda, a former co-worker who'd always been jealous of me. "People are so nosy," I said, closing the browser window. "Can't a married woman have friends?" "Of course," Nate said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe my innocent act. "Just seems like you're having a lot of fun lately. Your husband cool with that?" "My husband doesn't control my social life," I said firmly. "I'm not his property." "Never said you were. Just observing." Rafa appeared with coffee and a concerned expression. "Hey, you okay? You left pretty quickly last night." "I'm fine, just tired." "Good, because I was thinking we could do it again tonight. There's this new place on 5th Street that's supposed to be amazing." The thought of another night out, another chance to feel wanted and interesting, was tempting. But something in Nate's expression warned me that I was already walking a tightrope. Maybe, I said. Let me see how the day goes. My phone rang. Lydia. I need to take this, I said, stepping into the break room. Tilly, what the hell is going on? Lydia's voice was sharp with concern. What do you mean? I saw your Instagram post, and Caleb called me this morning, asking if you were staying here last night. He sounded different. Different how? Cold. Really cold. He said you two had some things to work out, and he wanted to make sure you were safe. When I told him I hadn't seen you, he just said, I see, and hung up. My heart pounded. He's being dramatic. We had a little fight, that's all. A little fight? Tilly, he's never called me before. Not once in 5 years of marriage. And you're posting pictures with other men at bars. What's really going on? I could hear the judgment in her voice, the assumption that I was the problem. Everyone always took Caleb's side because he was so quiet and reasonable. No one ever considered that maybe his silence was a form of cruelty. Nothing's going on. I'm just tired of being treated like a piece of furniture in my own marriage. So you're acting out on social media? I'm living my life, Lydia. Sorry if that offends everyone. There was a long pause. Tilly, I love you, but you're scaring me. This isn't like you. Maybe this is exactly like me. Maybe you just never paid attention before. I hung up before she could respond, anger burning in my chest. Everyone was so quick to judge, so ready to assume I was the villain. No one bothered to ask why I was unhappy or what Caleb had done to drive me to this point. The rest of the day passed in a haze of whispered conversations and sideways glances. I threw myself into work, processing employee complaints and scheduling reviews, trying to ignore the growing certainty that my life was spiraling out of control. At lunch, I met Rafa at a cafe near the office. He was sweet and attentive, asking about my morning and complimenting my outfit. For 30 minutes, I felt like myself again. Interesting, attractive, worth someone's time. You know, he said as we walked back to the building, if you ever need someone to talk to about marriage stuff, I'm here. I went through a rough divorce 2 years ago. I know how isolating it can feel. Thanks, I said, touched by his sincerity. It means a lot to know someone understands. He squeezed my hand briefly, and I felt a spark of something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope, maybe, or possibility. That afternoon, I posted another photo, this one of my lunch salad with the caption, treating myself to good food and better company. Life's too short to settle for less than you deserve. And self-care, ultra new chapter. It was subtle enough to maintain plausible deniability, but clear enough to send a message. I was moving on, with or without Caleb's approval. By 5 o'clock, I'd made my decision. I was going out with Rafa again. I deserved to feel alive and appreciated, and if Caleb had a problem with that, he could join the conversation instead of sulking like a child. But when I got home, I found something that stopped me cold. The apartment was exactly as I'd left it, except for one thing. Caleb's home office door was locked. In 5 years of marriage, he'd never locked that door. I tried the handle twice, then knocked. Caleb? Are you in there? Silence. I pressed my ear to the door and heard the faint sound of papers rustling, like someone organizing files. The light was on. I could see it under the door, but he wasn't responding. I know you're in there, I said, my voice rising. We need to talk about this like adults. Still nothing. I pounded on the door. This is ridiculous. You can't just lock yourself away and pretend I don't exist. The rustling stopped. Then I heard footsteps, and the door opened so suddenly I almost fell forward. Caleb stood there in his work clothes, but his tie was loosened and his sleeves were rolled up. Behind him, I could see his desk covered with papers and file folders, but he blocked my view of the details. You want to talk? He said calmly. Fine, let's talk. His voice was different, controlled but with an edge I'd never heard before. It made my skin crawl. Caleb, I can explain. No need. He stepped aside, revealing a manila envelope on his desk, thick with documents. "I think I understand the situation perfectly." He picked up the envelope and handed it to me. "This is for you. Read it when you're ready to have an honest conversation." "What is it?" "Everything I need to know about my wife's extracurricular activities." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready to stop pretending." He closed the door gently, and I heard the lock click back into place. I stood in the hallway holding the envelope, my hands shaking. Whatever was inside, it wasn't good. Caleb didn't do anything without careful consideration, and the methodical way he'd handed it to me suggested this wasn't an emotional reaction. This was strategy. I took the envelope to the living room and sat on the couch, staring at it for a long time before finding the courage to open it. Inside were printouts, lots of them, screenshots of my social media posts going back months, including ones I'd forgotten about. Photos of me at various bars and restaurants, some with Rafa, some with other co-workers. Credit card statements highlighting charges at places Caleb had never been. And at the bottom, a single sheet of paper with dates and times meticulously organized. March 15th, Instagram post from Murphy's Pub, 11:30 p.m. Caption, "Sometimes you need to remember what fun feels like." April Sayin, dinner at Romano's with R. Alvarez, charged to joint account. April 18th, text to D. Harper, "Saw your photo in Chicago. You look happy. I'm jealous." May 3, Facebook comment on D. Harper's post, "Wish I was there instead of stuck in boring meetings all day." The list went on for 2 pages, documenting every moment of discontent, every small rebellion, every tiny betrayal I thought I'd hidden. At the very end, in Caleb's precise handwriting, "We need to discuss our future. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Come prepared to be honest." I sat there holding the papers, finally understanding that my husband wasn't the passive, oblivious man I'd thought he was. He'd been watching, documenting, preparing, and now he was ready to act. The question was, what exactly did he have planned? I barely slept that night, the envelope's contents spread across the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Caleb's calm expression as he handed me those papers. The way he'd said, "Everything I need to know," like he was discussing quarterly reports instead of our marriage. By morning, I'd crafted my defense. Yes, I'd been socializing more lately, but that was normal for someone feeling neglected at home. The texts to Dom were ancient history, just friendly exchanges between old college friends. And the Instagram posts, I was allowed to have fun, wasn't I? This was America, not some oppressive regime where wives needed permission to leave the house. I got dressed carefully, choosing a conservative blouse and skirt that said responsible professional, not cheating wife. If Caleb wanted to play detective, I'd show him he was chasing shadows. The office felt like a minefield. Nate was practically vibrating with curiosity, and even Rafa seemed more cautious in his usual flirtation. I kept my head down and focused on work, determined to project normalcy. But at 10:30, my phone rang with a call that shattered my fragile composure. "Ottilie Vane, this is Margaret Patterson from Human Resources. I need you in my office immediately." My blood turned to ice. Margaret was the HR director, my boss's boss. She only called people to her office for serious infractions. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We'll discuss it when you get here." The walk to Margaret's corner office felt like a death march. She was waiting behind her desk, with a laptop open and a printed email in her hands, her expression professionally neutral, but unmistakably cold. "Sit down, Ottilie." I perched on the edge of the chair, my hands folded in my lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. "I received an interesting email this morning," Margaret said, turning the laptop screen toward me. Someone felt I should be aware of some concerning behavior by one of my employees. The screen showed a compilation of my social media posts, but not the innocent ones. These were carefully selected to tell a story. Me at bars with Rafa, captions about escaping boring reality and finding excitement elsewhere, photos that could be interpreted as romantic if you were looking for evidence of an affair. But worse than the posts were the screenshots of text messages. Not the drunk text to Dom, thank God, but other conversations I'd forgotten about. Flirty exchanges with Rafa about private meetings and special dinners. Messages to college friends complaining about my dead-end marriage and how I was wasting my best years. These came from an anonymous email account, Margaret continued, but the documentation is quite thorough. The sender seems concerned about potential workplace harassment and inappropriate relationships between employees. My mouth went dry. Margaret, I can explain. Can you? Because what I'm seeing here suggests a pattern of unprofessional conduct with a subordinate employee, misuse of company time for personal socializing, and potential violations of our workplace conduct policy. It's not what it looks like, I said desperately. Rafa and I are just friends. Those messages are taken out of context. Perhaps, but the optics are concerning, especially given your position in HR. We're supposed to be setting an example for appropriate workplace behavior. She closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair. I'm placing you on administrative leave pending a full investigation. You'll need to clear out your desk and surrender your access card. You can't be serious. Someone sends anonymous accusations and you just believe them. I'm following protocol, Ottilie. If the investigation clears you, you'll be reinstated. But until then, I can't have you in a position where you're handling other employees' complaints about harassment and inappropriate conduct. The irony was devastating. My job was to investigate exactly the kind of behavior I was being accused of. I knew the process, knew that administrative leave was just the first step toward termination. Who sent this? I demanded. I have a right to know my accuser. The email account was created yesterday and already deleted, but frankly, the source is less important than the evidence. These are your posts, your messages. No one forced you to write them. I stumbled back to my desk in a daze, aware that every eye in the office was on me. Nate pretended to be absorbed in his computer, but I could see him watching my reflection in his monitor. Rafa was nowhere to be seen, probably already being questioned about our inappropriate relationship. Packing my personal items into a cardboard box felt surreal. 5 years of building a career, destroyed by screenshots and speculation. But as the shock wore off, anger took its place. Someone had done this to me deliberately, and I had a pretty good idea who. My phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. Can you call me? I'm worried about you. Then another from Janice. Your behavior has consequences, Ottilie. I hope you're satisfied. And finally, one from an unknown number. Saw the news about your work situation. Maybe now you'll understand that actions have consequences. A concerned friend. The anonymous message made my skin crawl. Someone was watching me, documenting my downfall, enjoying my humiliation. And the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. I drove home in a fury, planning my confrontation with Caleb. He'd gone too far this time. Sabotaging my career crossed every line of decency. I'd demand proof, threaten legal action, make him understand that two could play this game. But when I burst through the front door, ready for battle, I found something that stopped me cold. The living room had been rearranged. Caleb's chair was positioned directly facing the couch, with a small table beside it, holding a manila folder, a legal pad, and a digital recorder. You're home early, Caleb said, emerging from the kitchen with a cup of coffee. He was dressed in his best suit, the one he wore to important client meetings. You destroyed my career, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You sent those emails to my boss. Did I? He sat in his chair and opened the folder, pulling out a sheet of paper. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? The timing is coincidental, though I understand why you might be suspicious. He consulted his notes. Paranoia is common when people's secret behavior is exposed. Secret behavior? I posted on Instagram, Caleb. That's not exactly covert operations. No, but the pattern is interesting. He pulled out more papers. According to my research, workplace affairs often follow predictable stages: private messages, after-work socializing, gradual boundary erosion. Sound familiar? There is no affair. Perhaps not physically, yet, but emotional infidelity is still infidelity, Ottilie. And your messages to Rafa suggest you were heading in that direction. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. The Caleb I knew was passive, avoidant, uncomfortable with confrontation. This man was calm, prepared, methodical in his destruction of my defenses. How did you get those messages? You left your phone unlocked Tuesday night. I took screenshots of anything relevant to our marriage. He smiled slightly. All perfectly legal between spouses, according to my attorney. Your attorney? Did you think I'd handle this without professional guidance? I'm not impulsive like some people. The dig hit home, but I refused to let him see it. Fine. You want to play games? Let's play. I'll tell everyone how you violated my privacy, how you're trying to control and manipulate me. You're welcome to try, but I'd consider your position carefully. He pulled out another document. Your social media posts paint a picture of a woman actively seeking to replace her husband. Your messages to Dom Harper suggest ongoing emotional attachment to an ex-lover. And your relationship with Rafa Alvarez crosses professional boundaries. Those are private thoughts and feelings. I'm allowed to have them. Of course, but you're not allowed to act on them while remaining married to me. He leaned forward slightly. Here's what's going to happen, Ottilie. You're going to choose. You can work on our marriage, real work, with counseling and commitment, or you can continue down this path. But you can't do both. You can't give me ultimatums. I'm offering you a choice with full information about the consequences. He tapped the folder. I have documentation of everything. Your infidelity, your lies, your attempts to paint me as the villain while you pursue other men. If you want a divorce, I'll give you one. But it won't be the victimized wife narrative you've been crafting. The room spun around me. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected. I'd prepared for tears, accusations, dramatic threats. Not this cold, clinical dismantling of my carefully constructed reality. I need time to think, I said weakly. Of course. Take all the time you need. He stood and handed me a business card. My attorney's information, in case you decide you'd prefer to handle this through legal channels. He walked toward the bedroom, then paused at the doorway. Oh, and Ottilie, you might want to check your email. I believe you have some reading to do. After he left, I opened my laptop with trembling hands. There was indeed an email waiting, sent from Caleb's account an hour ago. Attached, you'll find a comprehensive timeline of our marriage's deterioration, including documented evidence of your extramarital relationships and public statements about our private life. I've also included a preliminary divorce settlement proposal for your review. We can discuss terms at your convenience, or you can have your attorney contact mine. Either way, I think it's time we stop pretending this marriage is working for either of us. Caleb. The attachments were devastating. Months of evidence, organized by date and category. Screenshots, photos, credit card records, even witness statements from people who'd observed my behavior at various social events. At the bottom of the timeline, a single line in bold. Subject appears to have checked out of marriage emotionally and is actively seeking replacement. Recommend legal separation to protect both parties' interests. I closed the laptop and sat in the rearranged living room, finally understanding that my husband hadn't just discovered my secrets. He'd been building a case against me, piece by piece, with the same methodical precision he applied to financial analysis. And now he was ready to present his findings. The weekend passed in a blur of panic and desperate damage control. I'd lost my job, my husband had turned into a legal strategist, and my sister was sending increasingly worried texts that I couldn't bring myself to answer, but I wasn't going down without a fight. Monday morning, I launched my counter-offensive. If Caleb wanted to play the victim, I'd show everyone who the real victim was. I spent 2 hours crafting a Facebook post that told my side of the story. Going through a difficult time right now. It's heartbreaking when the person you trusted most uses your private thoughts against you. I'm learning that emotional abuse can be subtle, isolating someone from friends, monitoring their communications, punishing them for having feelings. I thought I was in a loving marriage, but apparently expressing unhappiness or maintaining friendships is grounds for retaliation. Please keep me in your thoughts as I navigate this challenging situation. Emotional abuse is aus gaslighting, aus finding my voice. I tagged it with domestic violence resources and shared it to my Instagram stories for maximum visibility. Within an hour, I had dozens of supportive comments from friends and acquaintances, expressing outrage at Caleb's behavior and offering help. You deserve so much better. I always thought something was off about him. Stay strong, girl. You've got this. What a controlling psycho. You're better off without him. The validation felt like oxygen after drowning. Finally, people were seeing the truth, that I was the injured party here, not the villain Caleb was trying to paint me as. But my triumph was short-lived. Tuesday afternoon, my phone started buzzing with notifications from a group chat I'd forgotten I was in. College friends who'd known both me and Dom. Someone had shared a screenshot of my drunk text, the one I thought was private between me and Dom. Holy shit, is this real? Tilly, what the hell? This is so messy. Poor Caleb, I always liked him. Wait, she's posting about emotional abuse while texting her ex about leaving her husband? My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages, watching my carefully crafted narrative crumble in real time. Someone, probably Dom himself, had shared my most humiliating moment with people who knew us both. I tried to do damage control, jumping into the chat to explain that the text was taken out of context, that I'd been drunk and upset, that it didn't mean anything. But the more I explained, the worse it got. Context? You literally said you made a mistake marrying him. And now you're claiming he's abusive? That's pretty convenient. This is really manipulative, Tilly. Like, really bad. I left the group chat and blocked everyone in it, but the damage was spreading. By Wednesday, the screenshot was making rounds on social media, shared by people who found my situation either entertaining or appalling. Worse, someone had connected my Facebook post about emotional abuse with the drunk text, creating a side-by-side comparison that made me look like a calculating liar. The image went viral in my social circles, accompanied by commentary about false abuse allegations and manipulative behavior. My phone became a source of constant anxiety. Every notification could be another person calling me out, another friend distancing themselves, another piece of my reputation crumbling. Thursday morning, Rafa finally returned my calls. Tilly, I can't talk long, he said, his voice strained. HR brought me in for questioning yesterday. They have screenshots of our messages. What did you tell them? The truth, that we're friends, that nothing physical happened, that you were going through marriage problems and I was trying to be supportive. And they're treating it like I was sexually harassing you. They want to know if you felt pressured to socialize with me, if I made unwanted advances, if you were afraid to report me because of office dynamics. My stomach dropped. I never said any of that. I know, but they're following protocol and the optics are bad. A younger male employee, an older female supervisor, late-night texting, private dinners. He sighed heavily. I might lose my job over this. Rafa, I'm so sorry. Look, I like you, Tilly. I thought we had a connection, but this whole situation is toxic, and I can't afford to get pulled down with you. I need you to tell HR that our relationship was strictly professional and that you never felt uncomfortable. Of course, and I think we should stop talking. At least until this blows over. The line went dead, and I stared at my phone in disbelief. Even Rafa, who'd been so eager for my attention just days ago, was abandoning me now that the cost was too high. That afternoon, Lydia showed up at my door unannounced, her expression a mixture of concern and frustration. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into the apartment. "If you're here to lecture me, I'm here because I love you and you're scaring me." She sat on the couch and pulled out her phone. "Have you seen what people are saying online?" "I don't care what people are saying." "You should, because it's affecting more than just you." She scrolled through her screen. "Mum's bridge club is gossiping about it. Dad's getting questions at work, and Caleb's family is furious. Let them be furious. They never liked me anyway. Tilly, listen to yourself. You're acting like everyone else is the problem, but you're the common denominator here." She leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You texted your ex about leaving your husband. You posted about emotional abuse while having an inappropriate relationship with a coworker. You're lying on social media and then getting angry when people call you out. I'm not lying. You are, and it's destroying your credibility with everyone who might otherwise support you." She showed me her phone. "Look at this." It was a post from Amanda, my former coworker, sharing the screenshot comparison with her own commentary. "This is why real abuse victims aren't believed. When people cry, wolf, and manipulate situations for sympathy, it hurts everyone. Disgusting behavior." The post had been shared 47 times and had dozens of comments, most of them agreeing with Amanda's assessment. People I'd known for years were calling me manipulative, dishonest, and worse. "This is what happens when you try to control the narrative instead of telling the truth," Lydia said. "You've made yourself look like exactly the kind of person who would lie about abuse for attention. I never said Caleb hit me. Emotional abuse is still abuse, Tilly. And if it's not true, then you're weaponizing serious terminology to win a divorce battle. Either way, it's wrong." I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to make her understand that I was the victim here. But looking at my sister's disappointed face, reading the comments from people who'd once supported me, I felt the first crack in my certainty. Maybe I had gone too far. Maybe the drunk text was worse than I'd admitted. Maybe my social media campaign had backfired spectacularly. But even as doubt crept in, my pride wouldn't let me admit defeat. "I'm not perfect," I said finally, "but I don't deserve this public humiliation." "No, you don't," Lydia agreed, "but you created it, and now you need to figure out how to clean it up before it gets worse." "How could it possibly get worse?" She gave me a look that made my blood run cold. "Caleb's been very quiet through all of this, suspiciously quiet. When someone like him doesn't defend himself publicly, it usually means he's preparing something bigger." "Like what?" "I don't know, but if I were you, I'd be very careful about my next move. Because whatever he's planning, he's had time to think it through." After Lydia left, I sat alone in the apartment, scrolling through the endless commentary about my situation. The supportive voices had been drowned out by criticism, mockery, and disgust. People were dissecting my marriage, my character, my motivations with the casual cruelty of internet strangers. But worse than the strangers were the friends and acquaintances who felt comfortable sharing their opinions about my private life. People I'd worked with, gone to school with, trusted with my secrets. They were all weighing in on my failures as a wife and a person. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoying your 15 minutes of fame? Don't worry, it gets worse." A concerned friend. The same anonymous messenger who'd contacted me before. Someone was watching my downfall, documenting my humiliation, and taking pleasure in my pain. I tried calling Caleb, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried texting him, but the messages showed as delivered but not read. He'd effectively disappeared, leaving me to face the consequences of our imploding marriage alone. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, finally understanding that I'd lost control of the narrative completely. Every move I'd made to defend myself had backfired. Every attempt to gain sympathy had been turned against me. And somewhere in the city, my methodical, quiet husband was planning his next move in a game I was only beginning to understand. Friday morning, a process server handed me divorce papers already filed, stuffed with screenshots and allegations that painted me as a liar. Caleb vanished, but his lawyers froze accounts, cancelled insurance, transferred the lease, and sparked an investigation over my social posts. His mother arrived with the family attorney, presenting a meticulous timeline of my messages, reframed as serial emotional affairs. They gave me a choice: sign the brutal settlement, publish a public retraction, and disappear, or face a courtroom spectacle. My reputation was ruined. I signed. In the courthouse lobby, Caleb appeared, nodded once, and walked away, calm, strategic, finished.